You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, today we are going to have a long-awaited second-generation FI conversation. And for those of you that have kind of been listening at the perimeters but haven't realized this, a huge focus of Choose FI and of our community is talking about and highlighting the power of capturing these ideas at a younger age. You know, it's that, what if I knew then what I know now? And if it's too late for you to act on some of these principles, how powerful would it be to show these to your kids? And what if they were as inspired as you are now and were able to start taking action on it? And to be honest with you, in many cases, the second generation FIRE population, these are the early adopters. In many cases, we tend to latch onto these concepts after we've already made a few big mistakes. But time is the most precious resource that you have. And if you can find examples of people that have grabbed these concepts at an earlier age and adopted them and are crushing it due to that adoption, then it is incredibly powerful, not just for yourself to validate what you already feel, but as you're sharing these ideas with your kids, to really motivate them and inspire them to take action on these concepts. And there's no one in my mind better to demonstrate how powerful these ideas are than Cody Berman, who we actually met at Camp FI down in Florida. Now, at this event, Cody just showed up and blew basically the collective hive mind's brains by just talking about how he had practically latched onto these ideas, in large part due to his mom, Ruth, who had really introduced him to the community of FI, but then has actually started to take action over and over again on all these different principles. And Brad, who lost his voice at Camp FI, was really over there. This was the angriest I had seen him because he couldn't talk to Cody, and he was so desperate to kind of engage in this interaction. So we thought we would try to give him a second opportunity today. So to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jonathan. And yeah, that was a good intro. And yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to actually speak with Cody today. Yeah, as you described, at Camp FI, Cody just stole the show. There's really no other way to put it. And it wasn't like it was in some weird, overt way. It was just Cody letting out his story and his abilities and just who he is. And it's almost hard to explain. Like, I was trying to describe this to my wife, Laura, after the fact. Cody just became the star. And she's like, what did he say? And I said, honestly, it was just his bearing. It was his maturity at this young age. We were joking at Camp FI that if we could buy futures in Cody, we easily would. I mean, like, people would have plunked down tens of thousands of dollars to buy a tiny fraction of a future of Cody. Like, that's how impressive he was. So anyway, with that, Cody, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So Cody, this is one of those conversations that we view as this massive opportunity. You know, I think it's very easy to grab the people that are in their 30s or 40s. They have this high income salary, or maybe they're even just on the path and they're just starting to get their job and they're trying to figure out what this optimized lane looks like because they realize suddenly that there are implications for the next several decades of their life. But I think that a challenge has always been with high schoolers, with teenagers and people in their early 20s, that you view time as unlimited. And because you don't really see any sort of end game, you're not thinking about tomorrow in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of one of these, well, I might as well spend everything I earn. It's not going to make a difference. I have all the time in the world to figure it out. While that is a strategy, I think what your story demonstrates is it's probably a suboptimal strategy. And if you latch onto some of these principles that we've been trying to highlight, you can totally crush the game. Is that kind of your own light bulb moment as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think realizing that time is your most precious asset is kind of the beginning of my FI journey. From a pretty early age, my parents created this culture of my brother and I just doing math. We'd do simple equations like, what's 2 times 2? 4. What's 4 times 4? 16. And we just keep doubling it until we were in the hundreds of thousands or in the thousands, probably not hundreds of thousands, and we just really learned the value of how this money can compound over time. Obviously, it's not a 100% compound overnight type of thing like the math we were doing, but the rule of 72, using an 8% interest rate, your money's going to double in 9 years. And if you can just think about how much power you have when you're putting money away, and then 9 years from now, if you don't touch it, it's doubling, that's a really, really powerful strategy for retiring early.
And Cody, for everyone out there, can you just very quickly explain the rule of 72?
So yeah, basically the rule of 72 says that you take the number 72 divided by your interest rate. So I know, for example, you use 8% when you're calculating your compound returns. So 72 divided by 8, that's 9 years it would take it to double. If you were expecting a 6% return over whatever number of years, you divide 72 divided by 6, your money would double in 12 years. So it's basically just a rule of thumb to see how long it's going to take for your money to double.
So there's a gap here. So you're 5 years old. That's when you're kind of exposed to this basic math. And in fact, for many of us, that's when we're exposed to some of this basic math. But the connection from being able to multiply 2 times 2 or 4 times 4 to actually saving money and saving significant amounts of money, even as a broke college student, that isn't a thread that everybody makes or everybody feels compelled to make. Were there any more like obvious moments that really, for you, solidified that you were going to follow a different path or go down a road less traveled?
Yeah, definitely. So I think from whenever my earliest age of cognizance was, like maybe 4, I was fortunate enough that the Bank of Dad would actually give me and my brother 100% interest on any deposits we made into our savings account up until the age of 10. So if I got a few $100s from relatives for birthday money, I'd say it was $500. I'd put it all away in the bank, and magically the next day it was $1,000. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I think that's kind of what started me along this path of just understanding the value of time coupled with money.
Oh, Brad, Anna has like one more year of the Bank of Dad.
Yeah, I think I'd go broke with her savings rate. She's amazing. She's stocking away a lot of money. So yeah, I'm not sure I can do the 100%, but yeah, maybe 10 or 15. Cody, I'm curious if you could talk about the influence of your mom on your FI journey. We were also fortunate enough to meet your mom, Ruth, at Camp FI, and she's just an incredible, incredible woman, and also just really talented, by the way. She created this really cool song called The Closer I Am to FI. I guess it was based off an Indigo Girls song, Closer I Am to Fine. And it was just fantastic. So a huge thank you to her. I was actually singing it to myself the other day. It's very catchy. But yeah, she obviously follows the tenets of FI. And I'm curious how that was introduced to you and how overtly or just kind of passively she did that.
Yeah, so you guys kind of got the backstory from age 5 to 10. So I guess from age 10 on, so the reason my dad stopped doubling my money at age 10 was because I actually got my first job then working at my uncle's disc golf course in the snack shack / lost and found. And so I was making $5 an hour, putting all that money away. I had no expenses at age 10. I worked that job from about age 10 to age 15. So from high school years, when you really start understanding the value of money and when you can kind of really start getting jobs, this is where my mom was really teaching me the principles of just saving and frugality. It wasn't until a bit later where we kind of got down the path of financial freedom, but I had always been a saver. I had always been someone who tried to fix things myself before I bought something new. I'd always buy things used. I wouldn't purchase things I didn't have to, and I'd always search for the deal. Like I would get the lowest price on something I possibly could.
Did your mom present you with any specific financial independence articles? Obviously, it sounds like you had a good background in the house. There's this culture of understanding money, of understanding numbers and compound interest. But like, when was that aha moment with the actual financial independence community?
So I think the aha moment actually came during my junior year of college. My mom had given me the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss to read. And I was kind of going down the path of I really wanted to just make as much money as possible. I was going down the investment banking path. And after reading that book, I just realized, what am I doing? Because life is not about money. Time is my most valuable asset.
This is really interesting because you've kind of come to a similar conclusion as myself. And as a high schooler, you kind of get a list of, and honestly, you could probably just Google it, what are the top paying jobs? I have a feeling most high schoolers at some point employ that Google search. And you basically stack what you want to do just off of that simple list. But because I don't think you have these underpinnings, you don't understand like that, again, like what you just said, your time is your most precious resource and you don't calculate that into the equation. Even though at face value, maybe you're getting this great high paying gig with all the status that may or may not come with it, it isn't always as good of a deal as it looks at face value. And I think you're coming to the same place that I'm coming to in my 30s, but you're coming to it in your late teens, early 20s. Was that kind of your epiphany moment as well?
Yeah, definitely. I really had an epiphany. And honestly, like I had job offers on the table. They were like really high paying New York City internship offers. And I turned them all down. And I worked for a firm that valued my time, treated me like a human instead of a pawn. And that was just a complete turning point for me. I took a complete 180 after reading the 4-Hour Workweek.
So Cody, I'm curious, you turned down these ultra high prestige and high paying investment banking firms in New York City to go for more of a lifestyle play. And while I commend you, certainly, I imagine that there was some discussion or backlash or whatever you want to call it amongst your friends, your professors even, because that's not the traditional path. And I'm curious what that conversation looked like and how you, I guess, defended in essence your decision.
So I guess I'm going to address the friends and professors part first. There wasn't too much backlash from my friends because I kind of explained the situation. And once you kind of get that rationale in their head, like that time is really important, it's really hard to argue against that. And I received the most backlash from the firms themselves, actually. So I had to network really hard. In finance and in any business type roles, you really have to network to get in with the prestigious firms. And they were not very happy when I turned down those offers after I'd been networking with them over the past several months. My rationale was, so just thinking about it from a how valuable is my time perspective. So I'll give you some real numbers. So some of these jobs in New York City, they're an internship. They'd pay, quote unquote, $46 an hour. But you're working 80 to 100 hours a week. So just some quick math, doing an 80-hour week, you're making $46 an hour, working 80 hours a week. On a typical work week is 40 hours. You can cut that in half. You're actually making $23 an hour and you're working 80 hours a week, which you're going to be completely miserable. You have no time for yourself. And despite the enormous amount of pay you get at the end of the week, it's just not worth your time.
So just to clarify on that, Cody, so you're talking about a salary that when you do the math on it, it's based on a 40-hour work week and it would come down to roughly $46 an hour. But the reality is these jobs end up being an 80-hour a week gig. And when you do the math on what it would actually be, that trade-off it's not nearly as good as it looks at face value. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So it's kind of advertised by a lot of the big banks that they prorate based on a 40-hour work week, so they can say that they're paying you $46 an hour. But if you're working 80 hours a week, that turns out to be $23 an hour, first of all. And second of all, you have a lot less free time and you're going to be a lot less happy.
So Cody, when you actually dive in and do the math, as you're saying, based on this hypothetical of the $46 an hour, and that actually gets down to $23 per hour when you really do, hey, I'm working 80 hours per week. I'm curious if you did the math based on your ultimate decision to go with the lifestyle play where you didn't have to work as many hours, if it actually worked out to be more compensation per hour than the prestigious investment bank.
Yeah, so when you boil it down to dollars per hours worked, it actually worked out to more money for hours worked in the job that I chose. And the other awesome benefit was that they compensated for overtime, which is pretty rare in the finance space. So I thought that was a no-brainer to choose that internship.
Yeah, and Cody, this is a really important thing to highlight just for the audience, is that, and it goes back to the Vicki Robin book, Your Money or Your Life, which is, this is really about the essence of your life's time. You always hear people throw around, hey, I make X salary per year. But to me, that's irrelevant. And it's always struck me. And it's so neat to see you approach this at such a young age, because it doesn't dive into how many hours you work. What are you giving up in your life, in your relationships with your family and friends, which you don't have, with being able to do anything that actually excites you outside of work if you're working 80 hours a week, right? So to me, that dollars per hour, that's a much more realistic and important figure, certainly than hey, I make $100,000 per year. Well, you need to figure out, hey, what is that person giving up for that salary?
So Cody, you've made this choice to pick a job based on value in your early 20s. It sounds like it's a good fit. And I know there's so much more to your story that we're going to circle back and highlight even more to pull out all this amazing content. But I'm wondering, if we were to take a step back and you're giving advice to either a younger sibling or a friend, and he or she is just saying, hey, you've clearly optimized this thing and you've got it all figured out, what advice would you give to me? I want to follow in your footsteps. And honestly, I'm going to be selfish here. I want to do it even better than you. What advice would you give to me specifically?
So as an 18-year-old looking for a university and looking for a major, you really got to think about, or what I think about, is your time versus your money. So if you want to be a doctor, are all of those years really worth it for you? And is the money you're going to be making on the other end worth the time you're going to be put in? Of course, there's other outside factors. Like if you get true fulfillment from your job or from what you study in college, then go for it. But if you're looking at this from a completely FI framework, not taking any emotion into account, you really have to optimize which major you choose and whether or not that major will give you the most value for the time that you're putting in. And even stepping back a few more years, so maybe early high school, like freshman year of high school, I would really start to look at AP and CLEP exams. Now at that age, you're like, oh, why would I challenge myself and take a harder class? Maybe you have to put in an hour more of homework per week. And then at the end of the semester, you have to take this big AP or CLEP exam. Well, CLEP exam, you don't typically take a class for, but it's the same general concept where you can get college credit. But if you understand how much money you can save by taking those exams and getting passing scores on them, it is astronomical. So I really wish I took better advantage of them. I actually did not take any CLEP exams. I found out about them after from friends who had come in with almost a year's worth of credits just from CLEP exams. I was fortunate enough to take a few AP courses. So when I first entered college, I was already a second semester freshman, but I could have easily taken advantage of more of those exams. And I've seen people who have come into college with junior standing from their AP and CLEP exam credits. And if you go to a private university that's costing you, say, $50,000 a year, that's $100,000 in savings from putting a little more effort in high school. And although it's pretty tough to get the motivation in high school, if you can get that framework instilled in your mind beforehand and you have the vision of FI, it's a lot easier to get that motivation and to save that money.
So Cody, they come in as juniors. That by just back of the envelope math, you assume you take 5 courses per semester. So they've taken 20 AP courses and CLEP tests in high school. Like, how do you even go about doing that? Just actionable tip wise.
So for example, some of them will cover multiple subjects that you might take in college. For example, if you take a calculus BC AP exam, that will exempt you from level 1 calculus and level 2 calculus. So you might walk into college with 2 classes for that. Or if you take an AP US history exam, that actually counts at a lot of universities for 2 classes. So right there, you're already at 4 classes from just 2 AP exams. It's kind of a compounding effect. Just keep taking them and you'll just keep knocking years off your college career and ultimately off your college debt if you're forced to take out student loans.
I love this idea. We spend so much time talking about how to cut off time off of your working career, your typical 9 to 5, so that you then have the option to either stop working or find work that you find more fulfilling. But you can project this all the way back to college, and you can have so much overlap between college and high school if you know how to leverage these AP and CLEP exams.
And in addition to the AP and CLEP exams, scholarships are huge, and there are so many scholarships out there. People think, oh, I'm never going to get this scholarship, so I shouldn't even bother applying. But if you just apply to, say, 1 scholarship a day, which is not that hard, if you just put a reminder in your phone, or I know you guys like to use Todoist, put it in your Todoist. Just apply to 1 scholarship a day. Say you apply to 50 scholarships, you're bound to get just even 5 scholarships. If they're $1,000 or a few $100s a piece, those go really far. And just knocking out that student debt, you're knocking out loans that you're going to have to pay down the road, pay interest on. And so if you can get those scholarships early and just mass apply, you can put yourself in a really advantageous position.
Let's talk about scholarships a little more. This has always been a pain point for me just because I always felt like this, I don't know, it was probably a limiting belief, but I didn't even know where to start. And I was one of these people that didn't feel like it was going to have any sort of impact. So you say, okay, I want to do a scholarship a day. Practically speaking, actionable tip, where does that start? Does it start with Google? Hey, find the top 10 scholarships? Does it start with going to your high school advisor? At a granular level, what does it look like to do a scholarship a day?
Yeah, so I guess I can break this down into the 3 main portals where I found my scholarships. I think the first and easiest to get scholarships is through any local scholarships, either offered through your state or through your community, like maybe in your town or in your city. And those scholarships are a lot more likely to give you the scholarship money if you are a part of that commonwealth or that city or that town. Another place to look is Scholly, which is an app on your phone. That is really good. You enter in your criteria, you enter in your GPA, you enter in your major, you enter in a lot of other information about yourself, and it basically just suggests scholarships that you should apply to based on the criteria you entered. And the third best place that I found scholarships is actually scholarships.com. It's that easy. That was just from a simple Google search, and that turned out to be a really good hit for me. So those are three places where I would start for people looking for scholarships. But you can definitely just go on Google and type in scholarships for X, whether it's your nationality or your major or a life circumstance that you've been through.
So we're going to talk about the fact that you've kind of started a side hustle / business at this point. But I think the reason I wanted to bring that in is because, as I'm sure you're aware, as a business owner, one of the things you start to do is A/B test things. So you test maybe different designs or different marketing strategies, but like taking those same principles that you use for your business and moving it all the way back to when you're applying for scholarships. Is there anything that you can draw from to talk about this Pareto's principle, this 80-20? Like, most of your results that you found that you got came from when you really focused on this specific technique. Was it, hey, once I really developed the story that I tell myself about myself, that really helped me get these scholarships? Or the GPA, once I really nailed the GPA, that really helped? Or the extracurriculars? Is there anything in particular there that someone that's starting from scratch could benefit from?
Yeah, definitely. So basically what I did, I guess you could consider it a form of cheating, quote unquote, was make kind of templates for different scholarships. So there'd be like a scholarship for what's your best accomplishment so far, or what are your life goals? And I'd have like 5 templates, and then I just kind of tweak them depending on the foundation or whether I needed to change a few things in it. And that actually worked really well for me. And that was the same thing I did with my cover letters when I was applying to 30 plus firms for internships. And so using like a kind of a base template to start, I think that's one of the best places to start. And then you can just tailor it to whatever scholarship you're applying to or whatever job you're applying to in regards to cover letters.
Oh, I'm so excited to ask that question. That's exactly the sort of life hacks that you're looking for. Like when you're talking about starting a scholarship process, you can't start from scratch every single time. You know, we're talking about this efficiency of time. And if every single time you go to do this scholarship, which is, you're right, it's going to look very similar. Not every single one will look similar to each other, but they do kind of tend to self-collect in these different groups. If you can put a system in place to start churning these things out, suddenly your rate of return just goes through the roof. And like you said, you know, maybe you're only landing 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 10. But if it's more or less copy and paste with some small tweaks at the margins, now you're looking at earning what would be an hourly rate, you know, way more than you could ever possibly hope to earn working a summer job.
Definitely. I think optimization is key. And so getting those templates and getting those foundations laid for any aspect of life really helps you in the long run. And you don't have to waste time on silly little things like rewriting an entire essay for that might be the same exact question that you were asked in the last scholarship you applied for, or rewriting an entire cover letter for a firm that's almost identical to a other firm that you're applying to.
Cody, I know based on a conversation I had with your mom that you finished at or near the top of your high school class. So presumably you had some options when it came to colleges. I'm curious if you also took the same kind of FI mentality or scholarship mentality to your actual ultimate decision for college. How did scholarships and how did the overall cost of college come into your ultimate decision?
Sure. So ultimately, it came down between a private school and a state school. And the private school did offer me a half tuition scholarship. So I was only paying about 50% of the sticker price. And then I had a few independent scholarships from my hometown and some of those other ones I applied to through Scholly and internships.com. But it was still looking like it was going to cost me about $20,000 a year, which I would have to take debt out for that amount of money. But the state school, on the other hand, from all the scholarships I had obtained through my applications, coupled with the small academic scholarship I got from the state school, which was obviously less in dollar value than the private school, I ended up paying a less than $5,000 per year to go to that state school. So ultimately, my frugality won, and I chose the state school. And it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made.
Wow. So a total cost of college after all these scholarships of $20,000 or less.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough where my parents actually, they said they'd figure it out, and they ended up paying that $20,000, that $5,000 per year. So I am out of college now, and I came out with a positive net worth, which is pretty rare, and I know that I'm pretty fortunate to be in that position.
we have been highlighting over and over again, like, what is the estimated cost of college for your child when they're 18 years old? You're going to be paying $200,000 a year. And I remember even at one point, I was kind of pushing you on this idea of how much would college actually cost. And you're like, I don't even think my kid can go to college for $40,000 a year. But what Cody's saying is basically by using the same principles that we're talking about on this show and this optimizing mind, he's able to get it down to $5,000 a year. And obviously, like if your child can do the work to get the MSRP, the cost of college, down from $20,000 or $40,000 a year down to $5,000 a year, I would throw that $5,000 at a heartbeat. I mean, and it's almost like a litmus test for how engaged are they in this process, and regardless of the results, if you just see the work being put in, what an indicator of success after college.
Yeah. And Cody, to kind of piggyback on Jonathan's point there, did they tell you beforehand that they were going to pay the $5,000, or was it really, hey, look, I've got to cover the cost of college. Let me try to get all these scholarships. Let me make the decision to go to the state school. And then they saw your hard work and paid for it? Or was that kind of done ahead of time?
So basically, my dad would always say, we'll figure it out. And I knew that he would do as much as he could, but that $20,000 a year bill from that private school, even though that is a drastically reduced price for a private school, I knew that was unfeasible. I come from a middle-class family. Making those types of payments every year was a lot less feasible than making a $5,000 payment every year.
All right, so Cody, our thought has always been with this episode, let's capture the little things that get glossed over. When you're in your 30s and 40s looking back, it isn't as helpful. Like your experiences 10, 15 years ago when you were going through college may not be as relevant today. Things do change. And so what's great about you talking about this is that this is current, this is fresh, this is actually how it works. I think that so many people that are only a year or two behind you can benefit directly from this input. Let's move out of the high school scholarship phase. Let's talk about college specifically. You're in college now. You're looking to optimize this either 4-year if you're starting from scratch, or maybe this 2 or 3 year window that you have if you've implemented some of the AP and club testing tactics that we talked about. What advice would you give to this individual?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jonathan. So to someone who's earlier in their college career or maybe just hopping into college, the first thing I'd say to them is to get either a job that's earning you income while you're in college. You do have plenty of time. Some people think, I have so much work, I don't have the time for this job. Usually that's just people taking the easy way out and not blocking out their time effectively and not realizing how much time they actually have in the day. Having this additional income stream while you're in college is one, pretty easy to do because college is not a full-time job in the sense that you can study at any hour of the night and you have all day or all weekend to do whatever job you want. It could be a work study on campus. It could be working in the dining halls. It could be an internship. It could be an apprenticeship, depending on your major. And there's just so many different avenues in order to make just a little bit of income while you're in college. And if you are fortunate enough in college, and while in college, you usually aren't shoveling too much money out the door. Either your college is paid for by your parents, if you're lucky enough, or it's covered by your student loans. So that cash flow isn't immediate. So those earnings in college can go directly into, say, a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, depending on your viewpoint and what your plans are for the future. And getting started early at 18, 19, like I said before, just the power of compound interest with time it's so powerful.
Cody, you strike me as someone who does a lot of research and tries to figure out the optimal way. I'm curious how much research you did on different work and side hustle options while you're in college. What did you ultimately decide on for your job? And did you go through kind of a cost benefit analysis of, hey, this is how much I'm going to make, or maybe I can study while I'm working, or, just I'm kind of thinking outlandishly here. But like, was there any of that thought process that went into what job you actually selected?
Yeah, so I guess freshman year is where I wish I could go back and get a job during both of the semesters, but the extent of my work was going home on the weekends and working at my uncle's disc golf shop, the one I had mentioned previously that I worked at from age 10 to 15. If I could go back, I would definitely be looking harder freshman year for a job like that, but I was just getting into college. Like, it was so cool. There was a bunch of parties and I was in college, so I wasn't exactly looking for a job. But then sophomore year is when I started really doing a lot of research. And what I stumbled upon ultimately was a teacher's assistant position for an operation information management class. And so basically what I was doing was I was teaching Microsoft Office to other students. And I started that my first semester sophomore year. And it was kind of weird because a lot of the students in the class were older than I was, but I was fortunate enough that I did well in the class and I got recognized by the teacher. And through networking, by befriending some of the previous teachers' assistants, I was able to secure the position. And that job was one of the best decisions I made during my college career because, one, I was pulling in about $400 every other week from this job, and I was probably doing 5 to 10 hours of work. And on top of that, I was learning Microsoft Office like inside and out. So at this point, I mean, I consider myself excellent at Excel.
You're saying you can do more than the average function on an Excel sheet, right?
Yes.
Let me ask you an additional question about that. Just dive into it. If you're looking back, in my mind, yes, you can get any job in college, but not every job is created equal. Like, for instance, what you just landed onto, this teaching assistant position, this also allowed you to network at the same time. I would imagine that if someone is really treating college and they're really treating this job in college as a yet another opportunity to optimize, like working in the dining hall, which you said was an option. I could be wrong, but probably isn't the best choice from the optimizer's perspective. In my mind, the perfect gig in college would either be one that has a high rate of return from a dollar perspective. It has a very low amount of work required, so you're able to study at the same time, in which case that might be a reason that you would be willing to take less money. Maybe it provides free lodging, like in the case of an advisor or an RA. Or finally, it provides you either free tuition or it provides you the ability to find a network. Like, as I'm saying that, do you generally agree with that, or do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Jonathan. I think when you're looking for the perfect on-campus job, or maybe not on-campus job, but college job, you want those 3 pillars. You want good income, you want the ability to network, and you want the ability to either learn or do your homework. So a job like a dining hall job, that's tough. It probably doesn't pay too well. You're probably not going to get too much networking done, and you definitely aren't going to get homework done. So what I would say to someone trying to find a job in college is try to find a job where you can get your homework done, because then you can kill 2 birds with one stone. You're making money, your homework's getting done, and potentially you could set yourself up for awesome networking opportunities and get really close with the professor and maybe get to know more professors in that field. And ultimately it could lead to an internship. It could lead to a job. You never know.
And in my mind, I'm just going back to my own college. I went to Virginia Tech, and we have something called the Mass Center there. And so there's people that it's 24 hours a day. People are in there at 3 a.m. in the morning studying or, preparing for their plastics chemistry exam, which is impossible to pass for anybody. Then there's other individuals that are just basically at the computers letting people check in and out. They're just studying as well, but they're getting paid for it. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what winning looks like. If you're just going to be studying anyways, you might as well collect an hourly paycheck. Like, this is what it looks like, but it doesn't have to be that. Like, I love that you landed on the teaching assistant position because there's so much networking built in as you're working like hand in hand with these professors.
Yeah. So one of the best parts of that job was that. So I taught a 1-hour lab every week, and basically it was mostly on Microsoft Excel, but we did some Access and some PowerPoint. So that was 1 hour a week. I did about 4 hours a week of just corresponding with students because it was a class size of about 450 students, but just my specific lecture was 30, but I still had to address the forum where students asked questions. So that probably took 4 hours. So that's a collective 5 hours per week, but I had 15 hours of what are called lab hours where I would sit in the computer lab and monitor it, quote unquote. So basically for 15 hours a week, I was getting paid to do my homework.
So you had a little bit of everything with this job. You had the get paid to do your homework, you had the networking with professors and other teaching assistants, and you were learning a really valuable skill at an advanced level with Excel and the entire Office suite. That's the trifecta, right?
Definitely. I think, honestly, out of those 3, I mean, the income was very nice to have every other week, and pretty much my only expenses was food sometimes and then alcohol for the weekends. So that money was really nice, but the learning Excel for 3 years, not from just like a personal development level, but from a level where I had to teach other students, I really, really got a sound understanding of just how it works and function fluency and how to build a spreadsheet the correct way. And I think that was the most valuable skill I gained from those 3 years in that position.
I'm curious, as we kind of come back to this post-college life now, and you're in your job, and you've kind of, from a cash flow perspective, you've got a good paying job and you have a high savings rate due to the frugality and the culture that you had growing up in your parents' household. That path in and of itself would carry you to FI in a relatively short period of time. But I know that you didn't stop there. Like, what inspired you to go ahead and pursue a side hustle or start a business at the same time?
So ultimately, I think it was that introduction to the 4-hour work week, because Tim Ferriss really talks about just the power of a side hustle and passive income and semi-passive income. And I thought that idea was just so cool, building something that just cash flows for you when you put in a minimal amount of effort. All you have to do is lay the foundation and kind of just let it ride. So that's kind of why I started a side hustle. I had 2 failed side hustles before. I tried to start a t-shirt company that failed just because of lack of motivation. Then I tried to kind of start a side tutoring business, but I didn't do too much marketing. I was kind of lazy with it, and that also fell through. But ultimately, after thinking about all the side hustle possibilities, I'm like, okay, what are my skills? I'm good at finance and accounting. I'm really good at building spreadsheets, and I kind of had a marketing background. I've always had it like a creative side to me. Like I said in my story before, I have a disc golf course right across the street from me. So I've loved that sport since probably I was 8 years old. And I thought, what better thing to do to earn money than something I love? So junior year in college, I reached out to a mechanical engineer friend of mine, James, and together we started a company called Arsenal Discs. So basically what we do is we manufacture premium golf discs. If you're not familiar with the sport of disc golf, it's kind of like ball golf, except you're throwing a plastic disc into what's called a pin, which is kind of a metal fixture with chains, and it's kind of like when you throw the putter and it drops into the basket or the pin. That's the equivalent of getting the ball in the hole in golf. So just a quick run over for someone who maybe has never heard of disc golf before, but there's courses popping up all over the place. So we kind of just pooled our talents together. I was like, I can really run this business side. Like, I was pretty confident that I had the skills to run a business. Pretty good computer background, good financial background. I knew just how accounting works. Like, I knew that we needed to hit X margins in order to be making money. Then on the other side of the equation, I have a really talented mechanical engineer working with me who loves designing and who loves just creating things. So he was the perfect candidate to team up with in order to actually create like the CAD files, which is basically just an engineering software where you can design your own objects. So that's where he creates the discs. And then we prototype them. And ultimately, after a few field tests, we run more prototypes. And ultimately, we came out with 5 discs on the market. So those are the equivalent to 5 different golf clubs. We have 3 drivers, a mid-range, and a putter. And this was all possible just from recognizing my talents, recognizing someone else's talents, realizing I could not do it by myself, and teaming together and kind of just taking a leap of faith, hoping it all works out and putting our noses to the grindstone.
You know, it's actually funny. I actually got a disc golf pin for my birthday for my brother. It's one of these assembly ones that you can just kind of pop up and take down when you want. But in my mind, disc golf is this incredibly frugal sport that, like, if you talk about hobbies and activities fitting into multiple buckets, we just talked about this from the perspective of like optimizing your job, but you could do this with your hobbies too. Like a great hobby would be one that doesn't cost a lot to get into, that allows you to engage with other people. So there's some community aspect as well, and would also hopefully allow you to get some form of exercise. You know, these are these kind of 3 different reasons that people do hobbies: community, maybe frugality, and from a health and wellness perspective. And disc golf overlaps with a lot of those. And so I've been interested in it a while. Richmond actually has 3 of those courses. So I would love to like buy a set of your disc and use them with this new pin that I got for my brother.
That sounds great. And if I'm ever down in the area, I'd love to play around with you guys. I can kind of show you the ropes and bring down a set of discs. And yeah, we could have a great time.
Awesome,
but
man.
Like you said, I think disc golf is really the perfect FI sport. One, a round can cost anywhere from $0, which is the fee for most disc golf courses located in state parks. And the most expensive I've seen for a disc golf course is $25 for a round. So these fees are a lot lower than what you get at a typical golf course. And you could get a set of 3 discs, a driver, a mid-range, and a putter. If you're not going for the best quality, you just want something that'll work, you could get all 3 of those for $15. So it's a very frugal sport, and you can get exercise while you're doing it. And if you're someone who likes to challenge yourself, like most people are in the FI community, it's fun to play with your friends. You can see who wins around. You can play doubles. You can play by yourself and try to beat your personal score. It's just a great sport all around.
Cody, you should totally run an opportunity cost calculation for being a member at a golf course and playing golf for 20 years versus playing disc golf for 20 years, and send that to me. I'll share the numbers on a Friday roundup. Use Excel to create the report.
Definitely. I could definitely whip something like that up. And I think that would be interesting to see, just average prices for like a membership fee at a golf course. I mean, some people are paying, I know you guys joke about the golf membership, but some people are paying 50 grand a year just to be a member of a golf club. It's insanity.
I haven't played since Brad started teasing me about it.
You're welcome.
My future self is thanking both of you.
Hey, Cody, I'm curious, when you have a background with disc golf, right? You grew up across the street. It's in the family, essentially. But you read the 4-Hour Work Week. You had some sense of, I guess, as Tim Ferriss calls it, a muse or a side hustle or passive income, whatever we want to call it. What did you see about this particular industry that you thought, hey, there's a space here that I can take advantage of and make a successful business and make some money?
The main premise behind building the company definitely wasn't just to make a ton of money. I mean, if that's how it works out, then great. But I think having a true passion for what you're doing is so much more powerful than a hunger for money. Because when you're actually passionate about what you're building and about the sport, it really shows through the brand and it shows through your customer service. And I think that's why we chose disc golf, because I have such a deep connection with it. I love the sport. I like the people. There's a really strong community feeling. And that's ultimately what steered me towards building this company. It wasn't just for profits, or it wasn't just so I could achieve FI as soon as possible. Of course, that's a nice side benefit of it, but that's not the ultimate reason we started the company.
All right, Cody. So you have this side hustle and you've created a product. You actually ship these things out, presumably. I'm not sure if you have a drop shipper or if you are actually packaging these up yourselves. You obviously have a nice looking website here at arsenaldiscs.com. So that's plural, arsenaldiscs.com. Really nice site. But I mean, I know there's a lot that goes into being a business owner. Talk to us about the time commitment for this, how much it involves, what it entails, and is it more or less than you anticipated when you set out to this?
So I guess it's kind of in ebbs and flows. So when we first started the business, that first month, I mean, I had so much passion and just so much energy, because when you're building something up from scratch, it's just the most motivating thing. So I was probably working 40 to 60 hours a week on just the company, building it up. We were developing the website with the help of a marketing agency, just getting the names for the discs, doing a lot of research, reaching out to a ton of people to figure out who are we going to mold with, because we use injection molding technology to make these discs. Who are we going to do sampling with? What retailers are we going to reach out with? Setting up the social media accounts and a lot of other administrative stuff like that. So ultimately, you could see how this could get to a 4-hour work week in the long term. Yes, we do have busy weeks, especially when we're sampling new materials and we need to do a lot of correspondence with our molder. That's probably the most hectic weeks we have right now. But most weeks is just fulfilling customer orders that come through our website and then interacting with social media. We make sure we answer everyone on social media and on our website, and fulfilling customer orders. And to address your question, Brad, yes, we do our own fulfillment as of right now. Once we scale up, we're going to look towards a fulfillment center. But at this point in time, it just makes more sense for us, since we have the time, to do the shipping ourselves. Many people may have contention with the way that I'm approaching FI, but I think one of my biggest beefs with the financial independence community is hitting this number. And an article I recently read by Mr. Money Mustache, actually, called Money and Confidence Are Interchangeable, kind of really solidified this idea in my head. Because what I like to think about is what I call the reverse 4% rule. So say you're making $5,000 a year. If that's in your nest egg and you're taking out 4%, you multiply by 25 to reverse that 4% rule. And so that's $125,000 you'd have to accumulate in your nest egg to equate to that $5,000 you're earning per year. So my idea is that just once you cut your expenses to the bare bone minimum, and especially at my age, I'm very flexible. Like I could always move back in with my mom, or I could always eat ramen noodles, or these are very extreme scenarios. But if everything went wrong, I could definitely be very flexible and live on something like 10 grand a year, because I don't have kids. I don't have a house. I wouldn't have to be paying rent in that scenario. And so I think just taking risks and not waiting until you hit some number to pursue your passion is kind of the FI lifestyle that I really want to take. So I don't want to give you an exact date on when I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 per se. Could be in a year, could be in 2 years, 3 years. I think 3
I
years.
I noticed he didn't say 15 years or 20 years, Brad.
No.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I mean, especially being exposed to people who have done it at this age, you're just like, how can I possibly want to work a 9 to 5 after consuming all these blogs, all these podcasts about people who have done it? Like, what is the reason I would want to work a 9 to 5 job? And so I really can't see myself staying in one for more than 3 years. And I think going back to that article I read, that money and confidence are interchangeable. If I have a side gig like Arsenal Discs, and even if it's pulling in, say, $20,000 a year, I can definitely be flexible enough where that will cover all of my expenses. And so why not live the life you love now, take that leap of faith early on, and not wait till you accumulate the sacred cow, the nest egg, and you can't retire until you hit that certain number. I really, really like the idea of cash flow now, and that reverse 4% rule is like, how much money in my nest egg would I need in order to get X amount of income this year? So in my example, $5,000 this year is $125,000 in your nest egg. And that might take a long time to accumulate, but it's not that hard to make $5,000 in a year. You could work at Starbucks, you could bartend, you could do landscaping. There's so many options to make that additional income. And something I liked actually that Joel from Phi 180 says is he talks about the value of the dollar once you're close to phi, just how incrementally more powerful those dollars are. Because in those scenarios, it's like the reverse 4% rule I was talking about, like $1,000 a year using that 4% rule. That's $25,000 in your nest egg. And that's just a really powerful mindset to think about. And I think that's a reason why a lot of people who really go on this accelerated path to phi focus on real estate, because you can get that passive income, you can get that cash flow every month. And that's ultimately definitely going to be one of my future endeavors, one of my side hustles, maybe in the next year or less, maybe next 2 years, something like that. Definitely going to try to get into the real estate space, specifically Airbnb. I've been doing a lot of research into that. And just the cash flow that you can make can completely replace that income that you're drawing down on from a nest egg.
You know, Brad, I've been sitting on this idea for a while that, we've spent a lot of time saying, is it the 4% rule or the 4% rule of thumb? I am willing to say, like, for the record, for the second generation phi person, or for the individual that has figured this thing out and is pursuing phi at the age of 20 or 25 years old, my thing is, does it even matter? Like, does the 4% rule matter at all? Because the same individual that has optimized all their life choices by this point, 25, 30, 35, they're not just done. They're not sitting on the couch. They're optimizing and tweaking and figuring out cash flow situations. This doesn't resemble anything that we have been talking about in the traditional context of retirement or in the traditional context of the 4% rule. This is creating a lifestyle that excites you all along the way.
And someone with that flexibility and creativity to do this at 25 to 27 years old, yeah, you have to imagine in the subsequent 70 years that they're going to do some incredible things. So yeah, I hear you. It's kind of cute to talk about this as a 4% rule or rule of thumb, but it's a guideline. And clearly Cody's talking about building streams of incomes, building side hustles and businesses. I mean, this is what a creative and flexible life looks like. So Cody, yeah, I absolutely love that.
All right, Cody, we are going to hop into the hot seat, but before we do that, let's give people a chance to find out how to connect with you. If they want to find out more about your story, we're going to put a link to the show notes to an article that you wrote over at Get Rich Slowly. It was featured about a month or two back. JD was so excited by your story, he actually featured it as a case study. But if someone that's listening to this, maybe a high schooler, someone in college, or a parent looking to give some advice to their kids, want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is probably through my website at flytophi.com. Why work a 9 to 5 when you can fly to Phi?
All right, buddy. Well, let's go ahead and do the hot seat. Are you ready for this?
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
All right, Cody, question number 1, your favorite blog that's not your own.
I think I'm going to have to go with the Mad Scientist on this one, because I'm really about optimization in terms of numbers. And just early on, looking at a lot of his spreadsheets and a lot of his retirement calculators, like whether I should contribute to a Roth or a traditional IRA, I really like the tools he's built over there. And I think he does a lot of great work for the quantitative side of Phi.
All right, question number 2, your favorite article of all time. Now, this can be one that you wrote, or it can be somebody else's.
So I think I'm going to actually go with the recent Mr. Money Mustache article, Money and Confidence Are Interchangeable, because that really spoke to me about how you should take the time now to pursue what you love instead of waiting until you have X number of dollars. Just dive in, do what you love, and at some point, you can probably monetize that passion.
All right, Cody, question number 3, your favorite life hack.
So I think I'd have to say Airbnb is my favorite life hack. And the reason for that is a lot of people who are maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s are kind of scared to use Airbnbs. I don't know if scared is the right word. The power of using Airbnb while you're traveling is incredible. And I know a lot of people, like my aunts and uncles and just people in that generation, are kind of hesitant to use an Airbnb or any kind of like ride sharing app like Uber, or house sharing like Airbnb, or car sharing like Turo. A lot of those apps that have recently been developing in like the economy sharing sector are really powerful tools in order to save a lot of money or potentially earn a lot of money. So if you buy an investment property, you can earn sometimes 2 to 3 times the monthly mortgage with an Airbnb. Or if you don't use your car that much, if you're biking to work, you can rent your car out in Turo and make maybe $1,000 a month. So a lot of these economy sharing tools are really powerful, and I don't think people take advantage of them because they don't fully understand them, and they don't understand how they're monitored and how people are rated, and you're not just staying in some creepy guy's house. Like, there's reviews, and just for example, a hotel somewhere could cost $100 a night. That's a pretty cheap hotel. And Airbnb, you can get a decent Airbnb for $25 a night. That's not a far-fetched number. So just the power of saving that I've been able to do personally through traveling and staying in Airbnbs, I've probably saved in the hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars.
All right. Question number 4. You're only 22 years old, so I would imagine for someone that has as many optimizations under their belt as you've listed on this show that you shouldn't have a lot of options to choose from, but your biggest financial mistake.
Okay, so this is definitely going to have to be my car purchase that I made when I was 16 years old. So I didn't want to spend much money on a car, but my dad convinced me that I should get the best car that I can possibly afford. And so at 16, from all my previous birthdays and from working from 10 to 15 in the golf shop and other various jobs, I had about $12,000 in the bank. And so I spent every penny on a 2009 Volvo S40 T5 with a sports package. And my dad convinced me that it was a good investment because it was a safe car. It was a cool car. I'd look really cool at school. And if I could go back and just buy like a $2,000 beater and put that 10 grand into an IRA, I mean, that was at 16. So it would probably be something like 15, maybe 16 grand by now. And just forfeiting those gains with the mindset that I have of always wanting the optimal situation to happen. I cringe when I think about all that money that I lost.
What an incredible picture to paint. You know, to be fair to Dad, he did instill this culture of saving. So it's absolutely net positive, but what a reverse of the normal situation. So yeah, man, I definitely get that. It's actually incredible how many of us, the financial mistake involves the car. Like, we have been sold a bill of goods, and I don't think very many people understand the true cost of car ownership.
All right, Cody, question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self, your even younger self.
So I think talking back to just getting ready for college, I would take every AP and CLEP exam possible. I really think that if you apply yourself, you have so much potential to wipe out those general education classes and classes that you're just paying for to take, even though you may not want to learn them. And so going into college, all of those are done, and you can just focus on that thing that you really love, whether it's computer science or business or art or whatever it might be. You can just devote 2 years in the scenario where you knock 2 years out. You can devote your full 2 years to your passion and what you want to actually study.
Cody, with what courses you did take with APs and CLEP, were you able to cut off any time from your actual, what would be a standard 4-year college career?
Yeah, so I actually had enough credits to graduate a full year early, although I wanted to stay a little extra just because I wanted to be with friends and I was having a great time. And the last semester, I kind of took it easy. I only took classes I really wanted to take. So I ended up graduating in 3.5 years. So I still graduated a semester early. And for this last gap, so we're recording this in March, and from January until June, I'm actually traveling in Australia before I go to my full-time job in July.
It's amazing.
Nice. So it's a gap half year, essentially. That's awesome.
Yeah, basically just a gap half year, 6 months of traveling, no worries, just before I start my full-time career while I have the time and flexibility.
All right. And Cody, we have a bonus question. And basically in the FI community, we often talk about cutting down on expenses and saving money. But that said, purchases can enrich our lives in instances. So I'm curious, do you have a favorite purchase that you've made in the last 12 months or so?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the purchase that I made here in Australia, which was a bike that I got off Gumtree, which is basically the equivalent to Craigslist. But in Australia, I got the bike for $40. It's a pretty nice bike, but the best part of it is that I use this bike to deliver Uber Eats for side income while I'm traveling in Australia. Make my own schedule. It's flexible. It's decent money. And yeah, so the investment actually made itself back, which is great.
So to clarify, you're slow traveling in Australia, and while you're doing that, you're taking advantage of the new economy to actually earn side money or a side hustle while you're on this slow travel vacation.
Yeah, it's just nice having a few extra $100 per month. And the Uber Eats was actually perfect because I have so much flexibility that if I had a shift position where I had to get like a shift covered because I was traveling in New Zealand or traveling to Sydney or wherever, I wouldn't have to get it covered because with Uber, you can just do it whenever you want.
Dude, you're just crushing this thing all the way around. And this has been so much fun having you on the show and diving into your story. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been great.
So Brad, obviously it comes through at this episode, like what an impressive guy Cody is and how much he's accomplished. His mom, Ruth, who we were talking about earlier, actually messaged me going into this and just said, I'm just so proud of everything that my son has done and just how he has really brought this whole framework together. And she gave me some additional details, which if people are listening to this, trying to get a sense of practically what has Cody accomplished from an academic perspective, here's a few things. Graduated top 1% of his college class. His interests include weightlifting, disc golf, snowboarding, ping pong, MMA, and wakeboarding. He graduated the top 10 in his high school class with a GPA of 99.75, awarded for the most outstanding high school math student with a college GPA of 3.91. In his major, it was a 4.0. Teaching assistant, which we obviously covered, and was in the UMass Investment Club, won first place in the annual 2015 Investment Club stock pitch competition out of 25 competitors. Brad, this is one of those episodes that you have to find the right person to get it. I mean, frankly, I can't talk about optimizing college anymore. I can't talk about optimizing high school. I'm looking at it as an outsider. It's not information that's serving me right now. So like, in order for this to be applicable, in order for this to be relevant, you have to find someone that is incredibly close to it and can talk about what they did in the short term and what they are doing. And Cody is the first person that in my mind has been able to bring this to the FI conversation and show us what we don't know that we don't know.
Yeah, Cody is a very impressive person. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, to be this far along at 22, both in a monetary perspective and also to have this side hustle that he's created and really to have the mindset of FI, right? I mean, he has had that for years now, going back to turning down that really high paying and prestigious investment banking job that almost invariably would have led to a very lucrative job after college. But he made the decision really from a FI and lifestyle perspective that wasn't his path. So yeah, I mean, Cody certainly can speak to that second generation FIRE community that we're constantly talking about here. And yeah, I mean, I think this is the first of many times we'll have Cody involved in the Choose FI community on the podcast. I know he's thinking about blogging for us now. He has a lot to offer this community. And yeah, just absolutely thrilled that he got to share his story here.
So guys, Brad and I are always looking for a way to support this community and also in this case, support Cody as well. And so what we'd love to do for the next 7 days, this got aired on Monday through this upcoming Sunday. If you take the time to leave us a written review for the podcast, just go to choosefi.com/iTunes, follow the instructions there, leave us a short written review, and then send us an email to feedback@choosefi.com, letting us know that you left a review and what screen name you left it under. We are going to purchase one set of disc golf for every 5 written reviews that we get, and then we will announce the winner on an upcoming Friday roundup. All right, my friends, if you got value from the episode, if you've been getting value from the episodes up to this point, if this is information that you can use now or your child can use now, this is what we're here for. Take 1 second, press the subscribe button on the platform that you're listening to this on. It just lets the providers know that you're getting value from this content and you want to be here when we produce additional episodes. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.